Hello my dear friends, welcome to Live Prep. In the previous lecture, we studied about what are the various pulmonary volumes and capacities. So all that particular information we have studied. Now in this lecture, we are studying about what are the various factors that are affecting the exchange of gases. So there are three important factors that we are studying here. So all these are concept based. If you understand the logic, you can easily remember this. So in the NCERT, very good explanation and huge explanation they have given. So all the points we will study with details. Okay, it is a very simple concept. Let us see here. What are the three important factors that are affecting the exchange of gases? First one is pressure or concentration gradient. So here you can say concentration gradient or you can say pressure gradient. Please remember here generally the term concentration we are using for the liquids. Yes or no? But in this case we are talking about the gases. When we are talking about the gases, then the better term will be pressure gradient. Please remember, even though both the terms are useful and both the terms you can use it, but since we are talking about the gases, the better term is pressure. If you are talking about the liquids, the better term will be concentration. So since we are talking about exchange of oxygen, exchange of CO2, these are the gases. So the better term is pressure. So that's why we are talking about the pressure gradient. But you can also call it as concentration gradient also. Next one. Not only this, next one is the solubility of the gases. So these gases will be solubilized within the liquid like water. So within the water they are solubilized. So what is this solubility ability? So which gas is more soluble? So what happens if it is more soluble in the particular water? So all these things we will study here. Next one is regarding thickness of the membranes that are involved in the diffusion. So during this diffusion, so here some membranes are involved. Membranes of the cells are involved. So what is the thickness of that membrane? So because in the case of animal tissues, we studied about different types of cells, squamous epithelial cells, cuboidal cells, columnar cells. Likewise, we studied different types of cells. There we studied simple epithelium, compound epithelium likewise. So there, because of that, the thickness of the membrane will be variable, right? So in this way, there are different factors. So one after the other we will study with clarity. Okay. So first we are focusing on the pressure gradient. So here under the pressure gradient, what are the various points that we are discussing here? Now let us see here. So once again I am drawing the rough diagram. So please observe carefully. So here we are talking about the alveoli. It is a bag-like structure. This is alveolus. That means it is part of the lung. Yes or no? Now here what we are saying, and here there is a heart. Let us make a rough diagram here. Yes or no? So this is the right side, this is the left side. Anyhow, separately regarding the heart, we will study in a separate chapter called as body fluids and circulation chapter. Now in this is the atrium. This is also atrium. This is ventricle. This is ventricle. Yes or no? Right atrium, right ventricle. Left atrium, left ventricle. This is how two atria, two ventricles are present. And then here we are talking about the tissues. Tissues means these are the cells. So this is the tissues. So in this way we are talking about the exchange of gases here. So here we are talking about first regarding the atmosphere. First one we are talking is the atmosphere. Atmosphere. From the atmosphere, the air is going into the alveoli. From the alveoli, air is going into the atmosphere. And this is what we are talking. And next one, from the right ventricle, anyhow, in the next chapter you will study more details. From the right ventricle, deoxygenated blood is coming here. This is the deoxygenated blood. Deoxygenated blood. Okay, this is the deoxygenated blood. And where it is going? It is going to the lungs, alveoli. So at the alveoli, what happens? At the alveoli, what happens is oxygen from the lungs will enter into the blood circulation, and CO2 from the blood circulation will go into the alveoli lungs. Yes or no? So that once CO2 is removed and oxygen is coming, now it will become oxygenated blood. Oxygenated blood. And this is the oxygenated blood. Oxygenated blood. And this oxygenated blood is coming into left atrium. And from there it is coming into left ventricle. From the left ventricle, it is supplied to the entire body parts. It is supplied to the body parts. Let us see that it is supplied to the body parts. and this is also oxygenated blood. And at the tissues, what happens? Oxygen from the oxygenated blood will go into the tissues, and the tissues are utilizing that oxygen and producing CO2. So CO2 from the tissues will diffuse into this circulation, so that now again it will be blood, deoxygenated blood, and this deoxygenated blood will go into this right atrium. From the right atrium it will go into right ventricle, and from right ventricle it will go to lungs, so that CO2 will be removed and oxygen will be taken. Understood or not? And this oxygenated blood is coming to heart and then supplied to the tissues. At the tissues, oxygen will go into the tissues, and CO2 from the tissues will go into this, so that now again this part will be deoxygenated blood. So now this part is deoxygenated blood and this part is oxygenated blood. Understood or not? These are the names we are talking. So atmosphere, alveolus, oxygenated blood, tissues, deoxygenated blood. These are the various things that we are studying here. So now at these locations, what is the pressure for oxygen and what is the pressure for CO2? These individual values also they have mentioned in NCERT. What are these values and do we need to remember or not? Yes, in the NCERT they have given a table, and you should compulsorily remember all these things. Clear? And now before going to the values, here they are using a particular term. What is the term? Instead of saying the pressure of oxygen, we are talking about partial pressure of oxygen. Same way, partial pressure of carbon dioxide. In this way we are writing. So why you are talking about partial pressure? What actually this partial pressure is? Because see this condition anywhere, whether it is atmospheric or alveolus, oxygenated, or at the tissues or in the deoxygenated blood, wherever it is. Don't think that oxygen is present separately. It is actually the mixture of gases. Oxygen, carbon dioxide. Mainly we are focusing on these two. Not only these two, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, and many other gases are also present. Even nitrogen is also present. Yes or no? In this way, so many gases are present. So here it is actually a mixture. Please understand this. It is a mixture. So since it is a mixture of the gases, so that means various types of gases are present. So all these gases combinedly, so they are giving a total pressure. That is the total pressure. So now in this total pressure, what is the contribution of pressure by each type of the gas? So it is a mixture of the gases like oxygen, CO2, carbon monoxide, nitrogen, and many other things. Let us say like this. So it is that all these are present together. So total pressure you will get here. In this total pressure, you want only the pressure exerted by oxygen. So you need to calculate how much it is. If more oxygen is there, contribution will be more. If less oxygen is there, contribution will be less. So based on their percentage or the proportions, so you will get the corresponding values. So in this total, we are focusing only on pressure exerted by the oxygen. So among all these things, we want only this particular one. Only this particular we want. That's why it is called partial pressure. Of which one? For the oxygen. Same way, we want only for the CO2. So it is called partial pressure of CO2 or carbon dioxide. In this way, if you are talking, even though many are present, though it is a mixture, if you are talking for only one, then we should use the term called as partial pressure for that particular gas. So in this way, here we are focusing specifically on one particular type of gas. So that's why what we need to do within the atmosphere. Now in the atmospheric gas, so many gases are present. Everywhere so many types of gas are there. But our focus is on one particular one. So that's why in the atmosphere, what is the partial pressure of oxygen? What is the partial pressure of carbon dioxide? What are these values we need to write? In the alveolus, what is the partial pressure of oxygen and what is the partial pressure of carbon dioxide? That also we need to write. In the oxygenated blood, what is the partial pressure of oxygen and what is the partial pressure of carbon dioxide? That also we need to write. And in the tissues, what is the partial pressure of oxygen and what is the partial pressure of carbon dioxide? That also we need to write. In the deoxygenated blood also, what is the partial pressure of oxygen and what is the partial pressure of carbon dioxide? So generally how we are writing. So in the NCERT they give small p. and then anyhow oxygen, capital O, subscript 2. In the partial pressure of CO2, small p, capital C, capital O, subscript 2, below you are writing, that is called subscript, okay, 2. This is how you are writing. But sometimes instead of giving small p, they can give capital P also, so don't get worried, okay. So this is how we are writing the partial pressures. So in the NCERT, if you are observing, they have given a table also. They have given the table, information, everything they have given. Now we will write the same information here. So what is this information? Within the atmosphere, what is the partial pressure here? So first I will write for the oxygen everywhere. For the oxygen everywhere I will write, so that I will tell you one relation here. So in the atmosphere, the partial pressure of oxygen is 159 mm of Hg. Okay, of mercury. Hg means what? Mercury. So 159 mm of Hg, mercury. This is what the partial pressure of oxygen in the atmosphere. But within the alveoli, if you are observing, we are observing approximately 104 mm of mercury. Yes or no? But once it is coming into the oxygenated blood, now it is coming approximately 95 mm mercury. 95 mm mercury. But if you are observing in the tissues, within the tissues you are observing 40 mm Hg. 40 mm Hg. Observed or not? So even in the case of deoxygenated blood also we are observing 40 mm mercury. Understood or not? This is what the information they give. In the atmosphere 159, in the mmHg they have given, in the alveoli 104, in the oxygenated blood 95, in the tissues and even in the deoxygenated blood it is 40 each. Understood or not? This is what the information they gave with respect to the oxygen. And now we will see the similar type of information with respect to this CO2. Now let us see this. In the case of CO2, with respect to CO2, in the atmosphere it is 0.3 mm mercury. Yes or no? In the case of alveoli it is, 40 mm mercury. Okay. In the deoxygenated blood also it is 40 mm mercury. 40 mm mercury. And in the case of tissues it is 45 mm mercury. In the tissues it is 45 mm mercury. In the deoxygenated blood also it is 45 mm mercury. Understood? So this is what the values are. Since they have given these particular values in the NCERT, every student should compulsorily remember these particular values. You should compulsorily remember this. And now we will see this. The same thing they have given here. In the atmospheric air it is 0.3. Alveoli it is 40. And also oxygenated blood also 40. Alveoli 40, oxygenated blood 40. Tissues and deoxygenated blood. Tissues and deoxygenated blood they are having 45%. 45 mmHg, not percentage. Percentage is a different thing. So it is the 45 mm each. In this way they have given this particular table. And now what we are saying, for the exchange of gases we are talking about pressure difference or the pressure gradient. Gradient means what? Different values of pressure. Different values of pressure are important for exchange of gases. Yes or no? So here we are saying again the same thing. What is the point we are saying? So when we studied about the mechanism of breathing, there what we said, for the overall we said that air is always moving from high pressure to low pressure. This is what we said. But here we are talking about diffusion of gases. Diffusion. In the cell chapter, very clearly we studied about the diffusion. Yes or no? Simple diffusion. What is this diffusion? Diffusion always occurs from high concentration to low concentration. High concentration to low concentration. But in this case, since these are gases, instead of saying high concentration, low concentration, we will say high partial pressure. High partial pressure to low partial pressure. In this way you are saying. So please remember, if you are talking about oxygen always moving from high partial pressure of oxygen to low partial pressure of oxygen. This is what the logic is. Understood or not? And if you are talking about the CO2 also always moving from high partial pressure of CO2 to low partial pressure of CO2. It is a diffusion process. Diffusion is a passive process. Please remember all these things. Diffusion is a passive process. Energy is not required. Energy is not required for this particular process. Simply for the exchange of gases, energy is not required. But where energy is required? To bring atmospheric air into the lungs. In the previous lectures we studied, right? Diaphragm, free neck muscles of diaphragm will contract and external intercostal muscles will contract. So thoracic cavity volume increases, lung volume increases, so that negative pressure is created. So now it is coming. So for this muscle contraction, energy is required. Only for the muscle contraction, energy is required. Remaining things are occurring just because of the pressure differences. That's it. And once air is coming into the lungs, exchange of gases will occur. At which location exchange of gases will occur? Observe carefully. Exchange of gases is occurring at the level of alveoli. That means oxygen from the alveolus will enter into the blood capillaries, and CO2 from the blood capillaries will enter into the alveoli. And this is where exchange of gas is taking place. And second point, and at the level of tissues, oxygen from the blood capillaries is coming into the tissues, and CO2 from the tissues is going into the blood capillaries. And these are the two locations that we are focusing. And here we are studying about exchange of gases. At these two locations we are studying exchange of gases. Already I told you, technically this particular exchange of gases at alveoli you can call as external respiration, and this exchange of gases occurring at the tissues you can call it as internal respiration. Anyhow, within the cell oxygen is utilized, CO2 is produced, that is called cellular respiration. This is what the basic point is. So for this exchange of gases, pressure differences are important. So now let us see here. Now let us see. Anyhow, we will start with this atmospheric air. In the atmospheric air, what is the pressure? 159. And within the alveoli, it is 104. That means it is decreasing here. Okay, next one. For the oxygen only, you just focus. Only for the oxygen, you just see it. Oxygen partial pressure in the alveolus is 104. Yes or no? But please remember, from the heart, which blood is coming to the lungs? Deoxygenated blood is coming to the lungs. Please observe carefully. Many students, what they are doing, they are comparing with oxygenated blood. No, you should not compare with oxygenated blood. See this deoxygenated blood. Deoxygenated blood is coming to the lungs. So within the deoxygenated blood, what is the partial pressure of oxygen? It is just 40 mm mercury. Here it is 104, but here it is 40. So which one is higher? Oxygen in the alveolus is higher when compared with deoxygenated blood. Now obviously what happens? Oxygen from the alveolus will enter into deoxygenated blood. So as oxygen is keep on entering into this particular one, now it is called as oxygenated blood. So now you please understand there should be some equilibrium between these two. So it is keep on coming, so that within this, now you can get this particular 95 mm of mercury. Please understand all these things. Here it is 104. In the deoxygenated blood, it is 40 mm mercury. So oxygen from the alveolus is coming into deoxygenated blood. It is keep on coming and coming until the partial pressure of oxygen in the blood capillary is 95 mm mercury. Please remember this. These alveoli are surrounded with the blood capillaries. Anyway, I will show you one diagram also. Please remember this. So this is what already we studied this. These alveoli are surrounded with the blood capillaries. Deoxygenated blood, this blue line is coming here, and oxygenated blood, red line is going there. Yes or no? In this deoxygenated blood, oxygen partial pressure is very less. That's why oxygen from the alveolus is going into this deoxygenated blood. So once keep on oxygen is going, now it will be oxygenated. So now it is called as oxygenated blood. Understood or not? This is what we are saying. And this exchange of gases, even though primarily, majorly it is occurring at the alveoli, please remember already we studied this. Up to the terminal bronchioles, it is called as a conducting part. It is bringing the air. But actual exchange of gas is occurring in respiratory part. Yes or no? It is called exchange part. So in this exchange part, what are present? Alveoli are present, alveolar sacules are present, and then atria are present, and alveolar ducts are present, and even respiratory bronchioles are also present. So these are the ones that are involving in exchange of gases at the lungs. So in the lungs, at these locations, exchange of gases is taking place. That means from this oxygen is going into the blood circulation. This is what actually happening in this particular condition. Observe carefully here. This is what we are saying. So in this way, now the oxygen is entering into the blood, so that now the partial pressure in this particular one is 95 mmHg, and this is called as oxygenated blood. And this oxygenated blood, it is first going to the left atrium of the heart, and from there it is going to left ventricle, and from the left ventricle now it is supplied to the entire body parts. So when it is going to the tissues, now observe carefully. This is the oxygenated blood. In the oxygenated blood, what is the partial pressure? 95 mm mercury. But within the tissues, what is the partial pressure of oxygen? It is just 40 mm mercury. Now observe carefully. Here it is 95 mm, here it is 40. So now what happens? From higher to the lower it is going. So this point you need to observe, higher to the lower. This is what the logic is. So in this way, alveoli to the blood capillaries, and from this blood, again it is going into the tissues. So it is 104, it is 95, it is 40. So in this way, oxygen is entering into this particular one. Understood or not? So now the point you need to understand is, even though some amount of oxygen is going into the tissues, even the deoxygenated blood is also having a very small amount of oxygen. Some students, what they are thinking, oxygenated blood is having only oxygen, deoxygenated blood is having only CO2. This is wrong. Observe carefully, oxygenated blood is also having both. Deoxygenated blood is also having both. But why it is called oxygenated blood? Because partial pressure of oxygen is more when compared with carbon dioxide. But here, partial pressure of carbon dioxide is more when compared with partial pressure of oxygen. So both are present in both the cases, but partial pressures are different. This is the logical point you need to observe. So in this way, so some amount of oxygen is supplied to the tissues, because the partial pressure of oxygen in the tissues is much lesser. So that's why it is going. So once it is going, so some amount is going into this, and some amount is still present in the blood circulation. So in the deoxygenated blood, how much it is present? It is just 40 mmHg. So now the same deoxygenated blood is going to the alveoli. Once again, here it is 104, here it is just 40. So again oxygen is coming into the blood circulation. In this way, pressure difference with respect to oxygen is very, very important. So in this way, atmosphere to alveoli decreasing, alveoli to oxygenated blood decreasing, and then again in the tissues further decreasing. So in this way, there is a pressure difference is present. Gradient is present from here atmosphere to the tissues. In this way, it is keep on decreasing. This is for oxygen. Now for the CO2, observe the reverse. In the case of CO2, tissues are having the maximum partial pressure, and then deoxygenated blood, and then alveoli, and then this atmosphere. In this way, maximum tissues, minimum atmosphere. But for the oxygen, maximum atmosphere and the minimum tissues. So because if it is gradient like this, now oxygen can enter into the tissues. If CO2 is more in the tissues and less in the atmosphere, now it can easily go into the atmosphere. This is what the sequence is. Now for the CO2, we will focus very clearly. For the CO2, what is the partial pressure in the tissues? It is 45 mm mercury. And then in the oxygenated blood, what is the partial pressure of CO2? It is just 40. Because oxygenated blood is coming here, right? So here oxygen is more, here oxygen is less. That's why oxygen is going into the tissues. But in this, what is the CO2? It is just 40 mm mercury. But in the tissues, it is 45. That's why from the 45, it is going into the 40. So it is keep on going. So that slowly it is also increasing to 45 mm mercury. That's why in the deoxygenated blood, partial pressure of CO2 is 45 mm mercury. Understood or not? Now this deoxygenated blood is going to right atrium. From there it is going to right ventricle of heart, and from there it is going to the lungs. It is going to the lungs. Now here, this is also deoxygenated blood. What is the partial pressure? 45 mm mercury. And within the lung, what it is? It is just 40. So here it is more, 45, but here it is less, it is 40. So from higher to the lower it is going. So CO2 from deoxygenated blood will simply diffuse into the alveolus. In this way it is diffusing into the alveolus, and then finally it is released into the atmosphere. So within the atmosphere, what is the partial pressure? It is just 0.3 mm mercury. So in this way, if you are observing this partial pressures, you can see some gradient, some range, some different values of pressures you can observe. So from atmosphere to tissue, partial pressure for oxygen is keep on increasing. From tissue to atmosphere, partial pressure for CO2 is slowly decreasing. So in this way, for the exchange of gases, always the partial pressures are very, very important. So in this way, for individual gases we have studied. Now for both at a time, same information, for both at a time I will tell you. Now deoxygenated blood is going to the lungs. Deoxygenated blood is going to the lungs. In the deoxygenated blood, oxygen is 40 and CO2 is 45. But within the alveolus, Oxygen is 104, CO2 is 40. Now both of them are occurring at the same time. Oxygen is more here, so from alveolus it is coming into the capillaries, and within the capillaries CO2 is more, so now it is going into the alveolus. So both of them are occurring at the same time. So that's why it is the exchange of gases. So CO2 from that is coming here, so sorry, CO2 from that is coming into the alveoli, so that from the alveolus what is going into the blood capillary. So both of them are exchanged here, so one is exchanged with other. So that's why it is called exchange of gases. Here also, oxygen from the blood is going into the tissues and CO2 from tissues is going into the blood, and this is also a simultaneous process. So that's why this is also called as exchange of gases, exchange of gases. So please remember, our main focus is exchange of gases at the alveolus, exchange of gases at the tissues. Clear? And for these things, this difference in the partial pressures, are very important. So in this way, the overall conclusion is the differences in the partial pressures are very important for the exchange of gases. So in this way, the first one, under the factors affecting the exchange of gases, the first one is partial pressure or the pressure gradient or concentration gradient. This is what the concept that you need to understand. Since in the NCERT they have given the values, better you please remember the values. Values are also very important. With this part is completed. Quickly we will read the NCERT part. So alveoli are the primary sites of exchange of gases. So mainly at the alveoli the exchange of gas is taking place, but not just the alveoli, even the air sacules, even the atria, alveolar ducts, respiratory bronchiole. All these are also involved in exchange of gases, but the major exchange of gas is taking place at the alveoli. That's why the major sites for exchange of gases are alveoli. This is what the meaning is. Next one, exchange of gases also occurs between blood and the tissues. Exchange of gas is occurring at two locations. One is between alveolus and the blood. Other one is blood and the tissues. So not just at the lungs, even at the tissues also exchange of gases is taking place. That's what they are saying. Oxygen and CO2 are exchanged in these sites by simple diffusion. Simple diffusion is a passive process. It does not require energy. So please understand this. So in this way they are exchanged by simple diffusion, mainly based on pressure or concentration gradient. The major important factor is the pressure difference or the concentration gradient. So technically let us use pressure gradient, that is the best term because they are the gases. Not only this one, there are two other factors also. Slowly we will study those factors. What are these? Solubility of the gases, solubility of oxygen and CO2 are not same in the water. They are having different solubilities. So that also we will see now, and that is also one important factor, as well as the thickness of the membranes that are involved in the diffusion. When they are diffusing here from the alveolus to the blood capillary, there are some cells, their plasma membranes are involved. What is the thickness of those? If the thickness is more, diffusion will be slow. If the thickness is less, diffusion will be fast. So that's why thickness of the diffusion membrane is also very important factor. And these are some of the important factors that can affect the rate of diffusion. That's why these three we are studying. In that first one we studied the partial pressure difference. So generally, so there are also in some books they have given this, the partial pressure of this particular gases in the expired air, they are giving these values, but in NCERT they have not given. So even though you are not remembering this, no problem. But this particular table they gave in the NCERT, so please remember this particular table. Now we are focusing on this. Observe carefully. 104 here and here 40 here. So oxygen from alveolus is coming into deoxygenated blood. So that now it is becoming oxygenated blood. Now this oxygenated blood has 95 mmHg. When it is coming to the tissues, tissues are having just 40 mmHg. So from the oxygenated blood, oxygen is going into the tissues in this reverse. Tissues are having 45 mmHg and the deoxygenated blood is having 40 mmHg. Oxygenated blood is having 40 mmHg. So 45 to 40 now it is going. Once CO2 is keep on going, now it will become deoxygenated blood. And in the deoxygenated blood it is 45 mmHg. The same is going to the lungs. In the lungs if you see, deoxygenated blood has 45 mmHg, alveolus has 40 mmHg from higher to lower. So in this way, oxygen is taken by the tissues and CO2 is released by the tissues. This is what. In this way, pressure difference is very important. So in each and every location they gave the values. You should compulsorily remember these particular values. Clear? Next one. So now, pressure contributed by an individual gas in a mixture of gases is called as partial pressure. In a mixture of gases, when many gases are present, what is the pressure exerted by one gas? and that particular value is called as a partial pressure for that particular gas and is represented as PO2 for oxygen, that means partial pressure of oxygen, and PCO2 for carbon dioxide, that means that is the partial pressure for CO2. Partial pressures of these two gases in the atmospheric air and at the two sides of the diffusion. Two sides of diffusion means at the alveoli, at the alveolar diffusion location and also at the tissue diffusion location they have given in the table and also in the diagram. Just now we have seen both of these. The data given in the table clearly indicates a concentration gradient, concentration difference for oxygen from the alveoli to the blood and also blood to the tissues. That means in the alveoli more partial pressure when compared with the blood, and when compared with the blood tissues are having further lesser. So in this way oxygen from alveolus is going into the blood and from the blood it is going into the tissues. In this way partial pressure difference are very important. Similarly, a gradient is present for CO2 in the opposite direction. Opposite direction means from the tissues to blood and blood to alveoli. That means tissues are having maximum partial pressure of CO2 so that it is going into the blood, and when compared with the blood alveoli is having lesser. That's why from the blood CO2 is going into alveoli. So that's why it is in the opposite direction for oxygen. Next one, this is for the partial pressure. Regarding solubility separately we will study. Solubility concept is a very simple one. Please remember here. So please remember this particular concept carefully. All the gases do not have the same solubility. Please remember some gases they will be solubilized simply in the blood plasma. So blood plasma is nothing but mainly it is having the water only. So solubility of these gases in the water, directly we will talk in the water. Now we just imagine this, some amount of gases, whatever is the gas, at least some amount of gas will be solubilized within the water. That means it will be trapped inside that particular water. And here in this particular location, why you are focusing about the water? Because actually it is the blood that is carrying these particular gases. Different mechanisms are there that we will see in the next coming lectures. But the thing is, blood is mainly having the water. The thing is, before these gases are diffusing, across these particular membranes, first these gases should be solubilized within that water present in the blood. Please understand this. These gases are solubilized within that particular water present within the blood. Then they are going for the diffusion. So in this way now you can easily understand this. If the gas is having more solubility, then it will be quickly diffusing across the membrane. Please understand this. The gas having more solubility will be quickly diffusing across the membrane when compared with the gas having lesser solubility. For unit pressure difference, what is the meaning of unit pressure difference? This concept you need to understand, but here in simple I will try to complete this. Anyhow, in the next coming lectures, transport of oxygen, transport of CO2 we will study. Under the transport of CO2 you will clearly understand what is its significance. Let us see here. What is the pressure difference means? Suppose here this is the alveolus, this is the blood. So in the alveolus, for the partial pressure of oxygen is 104. But in the deoxygenated blood, partial pressure of oxygen is 40 mmHg. 40 mm mercury. Yes or no? 40 mm mercury. This is what you are saying. Now you just see what is the difference here. This is 104, this is 40. That means huge difference is there. That means majorly the oxygen diffusion here. The diffusion of oxygen here is mainly due to huge difference in the partial pressure. But if you are observing for the CO2, partial pressure of CO2 in the deoxygenated blood is 45 mm mercury. But in the alveolus, partial pressure of CO2 is 40 mm mercury. But you just see this is 45, this is 40. Pressure difference is what? Just 5 mmHg is the pressure difference. But in the case of this particular one, you just see it is approximately 64 value. Value difference is 64. But here is just 5. Now how you will justify that? So you may think that more oxygen is coming, less CO2 is going. But if you are technically observing this, almost, I am not saying exactly equal, almost same quantity of gases are exchanged here. How this is possible? Because solubility for CO2 is CO2 is much higher than oxygen. Solubility for this CO2 is much higher than solubility of oxygen. That is the reason why, even though the pressure difference is very less, since solubility is more, now more, even though very less partial pressure difference is present, more CO2 can diffuse here. More CO2 can diffuse here. Please understand this. And here solubility of oxygen is lesser. Even though solubility of oxygen is lesser, here pressure difference is very huge. That's why you can understand this logic here. Here huge pressure difference is required because solubility of oxygen is lesser. So to send more and more oxygen into the blood, what happens? Now more pressure difference is required because its natural solubility in the water is a little bit lesser. So in this way, solubility concept is also very important. The gas that is having more solubility can be diffused very quickly, even though the pressure difference is very less. So that's why here the pressure difference is approximately 64, here it is 5. So with two different values of differences we cannot compare. So we will take a difference of unit value. That means if the pressure difference is 1 mmHg, let us take the pressure difference of 1 mmHg. Suppose here it is 40, here it is 41. Then who will diffuse very quickly? If it is for CO2, it will quickly diffuse. Even the pressure difference is only 1 mmHg, since its solubility is more, it can quickly diffuse. But for the oxygen, it is very less. If the oxygen is having this type of values, its diffusion rate is very less because already it is just 1 mmHg difference, but its solubility is less. So in this way, solubility is also a very important factor. So that's why now you can understand this. Even though pressure difference is very less, how more CO2 is diffused? Because of its more solubility. Approximately it is having 20 to 25 times more solubility than oxygen. In this way it is having, that's why it can diffuse even though pressure difference is less. But for the oxygen, solubility is less, that's why huge pressure difference is required to get more and more oxygen. Same is the case at the tissues also. In the case of tissues, what you are saying, partial pressure of oxygen is 40 and partial pressure of CO2 is 45. In the oxygenated blood, for the oxygen it is 95 and for the CO2 it is 40. Yes or no? 95, 40, huge difference. So even the solubility of the oxygen is lesser, huge pressure difference is there. So that's why oxygen is coming here. And here for CO2 to go into the blood, now here pressure difference is less, but still more CO2 is going because of more solubility. So this is the reason why solubility is another factor that is very important for exchange of the gases. That's what they are saying here. Okay. Now here pressure gradient, pressure contributed by. So this point already we studied. Now we are talking about the solubility. Let us see this. As the solubility of CO2 is 20 to 25 times higher than that of oxygen. When compared with the solubility of oxygen, CO2 is having 20 times or 25 times, approximately 20 to 25 times more solubility than oxygen. So because of this, the amount of CO2 that can diffuse through the diffusion membrane per unit difference in partial pressure. Let us take a unit difference of, suppose let us take a difference of 1 mm mercury difference. Now who will diffuse fast? CO2 will diffuse fast because of its more solubility. This is what they are saying. So per unit difference in the partial pressure, CO2 will diffuse much quicker, even though its partial pressure is very less in the normal original conditions because of its more solubility. So much higher when compared with that of the oxygen. This is what they are saying. So in this way, solubility is another factor that is very important. And the final thing that we are talking is the effect of thickness of the membranes that are involving in the exchange of gases. Exchange of gas is occurring at the alveolar membrane. Here who is involving? The membrane, the cells of this alveoli are involved, and also cells of the blood vessel are involved. And here cells of the blood vessel and also the cells of the tissues are involved. So for our understanding purpose, we are focusing mainly at the alveoli location. So this is the diagram that they have mentioned here. So please remember, if you are observing the NCERT diagram, total 3 things they have given. So what are these 3 things? Now I will draw one rough diagram, observe carefully here. So at the alveolus we are talking, at the alveoli are bag-like structures, very good. And bag-like structure, but this wall is made up of cells. What are these cells? Squamous epithelial cells. Already we studied about these cells in the tissues chapter. Though the tissues chapter is deleted, I told you to go through that particular chapter again. Okay, so please go through this. So there we studied mainly about three types of cells. In the simple epithelium, we studied about three types of cells. One is squamous epithelium, squamous epithelial cells. Next one are cuboidal cells, cuboidal cells, and the third one are columnar cells we have studied. Columnar cells. What are the squamous cells? These are flat, thin cells. That is what we have studied. And in the case of cuboidal cells, they are cube-like cells. And the columnar cells are long and narrow cells. This is what we have studied. Yes or no? And here, please observe this. This is the alveolar wall. Alveolar wall is made up of simple squamous epithelium. What is the meaning of simple squamous? Simple means single layer. Single layer of squamous cells are present. What is the significance of single layer and multiple layers? If single layer is, thickness is very less. If multiple layers are present, thickness will be large. Please remember, if thickness of the membrane is large, exchange of gases will be slow. That's what they are saying, that for the exchange of gases, the wall thickness should be very, very less. Wall thickness should be less means which type of cells will provide the less thickness? It is the squamous epithelial cells. You need to understand the logic. Why squamous epithelium is present here? Because it will offer lesser thickness. It is offering the less thickness. That is the reason why simple squamous, single layer of flattened cells. So simple squamous epithelium is present in the wall of alveolus. This is one important point. Second important point is the blood vessel. So in the next chapter that is called body fluids and circulation, you will study about the arteries and veins. If you are observing the cross section of artery and vein, anyhow that is there in the syllabus, but in the next chapter we will study. Actually it is having three layers here. It is having the three layers, observe carefully. So this one layer is called as outermost, is called as tunica externa, and the middle layer is called as tunica media, and the innermost layer is called as tunica intima. In this way, in the artery and vein, three layers are present. Okay, outermost is the connective tissue, and the middle is the generally the muscular layer, smooth muscles are present, and the innermost will be having the epithelial. Which epithelial? Generally it is having squamous epithelial. This is what the artery vein are present. But here what we are saying, arteries, larger arteries are divided into smaller arteries, and arteries are divided into arterioles, and arterioles are further divided into finally capillaries. What is the significance of these capillaries? So we are saying that from the heart the blood is pumped to the lungs, but initially it is the artery that is coming. Yes or no? It is the pulmonary artery that is coming there, and that pulmonary artery will divide into some arterioles, and arterioles will further divide into capillaries. So now the question is, so this is the tunica externa, tunica media, tunica intima. In this way, in the artery and vein they are present, and this innermost, this gap is called as lumen. These are the things that you will study in the next chapter. But the question here is, in the case of capillaries, do you find all these layers? Question is very important. It is a logical question. Observe carefully. Do you find all these layers in the capillaries? Do you find all these layers in the capillaries? No, you will not find this. If these many layers are there, what happens? The thickness of this wall will be more. If the thickness of wall is more, diffusion will be very, very less. So that's why these many layers are not present in capillaries. In the case of capillaries, what is present? Only the innermost layer is present. What is this innermost layer? Innermost layer is again simple squamous epithelium. It is simple squamous epithelium. So this is the capillary. This is the capillary wall. Please observe carefully here. This is the capillary wall. Now the blood is flowing in this particular one. Understood or not? Now these are bringing the deoxygenated blood. Now here what are present? Here also it is simple squamous epithelium. Simple squamous epithelium of the blood vessel is called as endothelium. Simple squamous epithelium of blood vessel is called as endothelium. Please remember this. This is also simple squamous epithelium. What is the significance of this? Thickness is very, very less. So alveolar wall is also having simple squamous epithelium, and the wall of blood capillary is also having simple squamous epithelium. Single layer of flattened cells. So the advantage is thickness is decreased. Thickness of the membranes is decreased. Wall thickness is decreased. So that diffusion of gases can occur very easily. So oxygen from the alveoli can easily come into the capillaries, and CO2 from the capillaries can easily go into alveoli. This is what the significance is. Understood or not? So in this way, these are the two walls, and not only these two walls. Between this, there is a basement substance. There is a basement substance. It is also called as a basement membrane. Basement membrane. Basement substance. Basement substance. It is also called as basement membrane. Basement membrane. And this basement membrane does not contain any cells. Very, very important point. Many students are making mistake here. Wall of the alveoli is having the cells, simple squamous epithelium, single cell layer thickness, and the blood capillaries of wall is also having single cell thickness. It is endothelium, simple squamous epithelium of blood vessel endothelium. But the basement membrane present in between this is not having any cells. Then what it is having? It is having different types of fibers, and it is having different types of glycoproteins, some types of carbohydrates. Likewise, some non-cellular components are present here. It is non-cellular. It is non-cellular. It is not having cells. It is having some fibers, protein fibers. It is having some carbohydrates. It is having some glycoproteins. Likewise, it is having, but it is not having the cells. So only wall of the alveolus and the wall of the blood capillary, only these two are having the cells. That too, both of them are simple squamous epithelial cells. And in between this is a basement membrane that is providing support for these two. Now in this way, in the conclusion, what they are saying, what is the thickness of this particular membrane? It is less than 1 millimeter. For this, all the three means the wall of alveolus, wall of blood capillary plus basement membrane. All the three combinedly, the thickness is less than 1 millimeter technically. So that means the thickness of this particular diffusion membrane, this is entirely all the three combinedly called as diffusion membrane. This diffusion membrane thickness is very, very less. That's why diffusion of gases can occur very easily. So in this way, thickness of the diffusion membrane is also very, very important. If the thickness is more, diffusion of gases will be slow. If the diffusion is very less, diffusion of gases will occur very quickly. So with this concept is completed. So in this way, overall three factors we studied. Pressure difference, concentration difference, or pressure gradient is important. Second one, solubility of the gas, and the third one is thickness of the diffusion membrane. So these are the three important factors. Now let us see regarding the thickness of the diffusion membrane. This is the NCERT diagram. This is the alveolar cavity. This is the wall of alveolus. Wall of the alveolus is having simple squamous epithelium. Squamous epithelium of alveolar wall. Alveolar wall is having squamous epithelium. Within brackets they give one cell thickness. It is only one cell thickness means what? It is simple squamous epithelium. It is not stratified squamous. It is not stratified. In the stratified, multiple layers are there, but it is single. That means it is simple squamous epithelium. You need to compulsorily remember the name, even though tissues chapter is deleted because the names were used here. Next one, let us see the wall of the blood capillary. Wall of the blood capillary is called endothelium of blood capillary. This is also simple squamous epithelium. And in between this, they have mentioned about the basement substance. This is not having the cells. It is having various types of fibers and some other substances. That's it. And its function is to provide support for both of these walls. That's it. In this way, overall, three components. What are these? Wall of the alveolus, basement membrane, and wall of the blood capillary. These three combinedly, they are forming the diffusion membrane at the alveoli. Similar type of concept is applicable even in the tissues also. There also blood capillaries are present and the tissues are present. Tissue means it is the cell. Cell is having plasma membrane, and the wall of the capillary is having the simple squamous epithelium. There the exchange of gases will occur. That's it. This is what the logical concept is. Yes or no? So this is what the point they are saying. Now let us see. The diffusion membrane is made up of three major layers. What are these three major layers? Namely, the thin squamous epithelium of alveoli. Alveolar wall is the simple squamous epithelium. Next one, endothelium of alveolar capillaries. Capillaries present at the alveoli. That's why alveolar capillaries. They are having endothelium, that is also simple squamous epithelium. and basement substance in between them. Between these two things, basement substance is present. So these are the three things present in the diffusion membrane. Regarding basement membrane, they gave some points. What is this? Basement substance is composed of thin basement membrane. It is having a thin membrane, basement membrane, that is supporting squamous epithelium and the basement membrane, squamous epithelium. Squamous epithelium is present on both the sides and it is providing support for the squamous epithelium, and the basement membrane surrounding the single layer of endothelial cells of capillaries. That means simple squamous epithelium of alveolus, simple squamous epithelium of the blood capillary. Both of them are supported by this basement membrane that is present between this, and it is having some other molecules also, compounds also. So that's why combined it is called as basement substance. In this way, it is present in between them and it is providing some support to them. That's it. Next one. However, its total thickness is much less than 1 millimeter. Overall, all the three layers combinedly, it is less than 1 millimeter. That means it is very, very thin. Therefore, all the factors in our body are favorable for diffusion of oxygen from alveoli to tissues. So in this way, all the three factors, pressure gradient, you just take it, solubility and thickness of the membrane, you just say it. So that's in this way, all the three are favorable for transport of oxygen or exchange of gases, and here at the alveoli, and ultimately they are going to the tissues through the blood. This is what they are saying, and that of CO2 from the tissues to the alveoli. So for the CO2 also some factors are favorable. All the three factors are favorable, so that CO2 can easily move from tissues to the alveoli through the blood. This is what they are saying. That's it. With this, the factors that are affecting the exchange of gases is completed. Okay. So with this part is completed. So regarding the specific transport, how exactly oxygen is transported, how exactly CO2 is transported. So those things we can slowly study in the next coming lectures. So with this particular part is completed. We will meet in the next lecture. Thank you.